All right, Josh Smith here, live at Flat 5. Today's guest is one of the baddest dudes on the planet and a great friend. We're both super nerds, so we connected on that level the first time we got to hang. We love comic books and sci-fi and all that shit. But this dude is one of the baddest guitar players around. I think at the forefront of like this modern guitar hero who blurs the lines between all the styles but loves them, and is able to kind of treat them with respect, but then still come out the other end sounding like himself. He's just a master player and musician. Has great stuff out. If you haven't seen his live DVD, you need to see that. His new record is fucking slamming. He's got great True Fire courses. He's just a bad dude, and it's a pleasure to have him. Please welcome Andy Wood.
Hey Josh, man, thank you for I gotta have you do all my intros. That was amazing.
You're welcome. Well, dude, it's true. Like, obviously we live in a day and age now where there's insane amount of great guitar players in the world and musicians, but I'm always fascinated and have been drawn to guys throughout my life who listen to a lot of stuff and are able to wear their influences on their sleeves while still sounding like themselves. And I feel like you have that. You obviously have listened to a lot of stuff, but when I hear you, you still sound like Andy Wood to me.
Oh man, that means a lot to me. Because I think growing up, it's like we set these little flags in the mountain in the road for our journey, and those flags are like, man, one day if I can just play whatever by so and so, and if I could just get whatever by so and so. But the reality is like, you get to a certain point in the road and in the journey where you want somebody, I think we all want somebody to be like, oh man, I recognize that guy, because that's what makes all of our heroes so special. I can hear Tony or EJ or Benson, and in just a couple of notes, you're like, oh, that's that guy, and they wear their influences on their sleeve. You know what I mean? That's the thing. You can't hear EJ and not hear Hendrix. It's there. It's right there.
100%. You listen to Benson, obviously Wes Montgomery's his guy, but he still sounds
right
like George
there.
Benson. You listen to Stevie, he loved Albert King more than anything in the world, but he sounds like Stevie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that they weren't afraid to go, same, even BB King. He loved Django and T-Bone Walker and Charlie Christian. He doesn't sound like any of those guys. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, yeah.
I
So,
mean, it really is true. And I think I would say, obviously, 100 times over the same thing about you. Like, I love when I hear you like lean a little Danny Gatton in, or lean a little Stevie, or it's almost when you hear master players like yourself do it, like it's like tipping the hat. It's like, that's not my playing, but here's where I stole the thing. It's like the tip of the hat, and like,
yeah,
and again, it's in all of our favorite guys' playing.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right, dude. So I start all these by kind of getting a basis for how guys got started. It's interesting to me because I don't come from a musical family. Nobody plays guitar or pretty much anything in my family, at least not in my inner circle, the close relatives. So it was a random thing that my dad bought me a guitar. He doesn't even really know why he did it. He just bought it, brought it home, gave it to me, 3 years
How old
old.
were you?
Three years old when he brought the
And you
guitar.
just like, hey, man, here's a guitar.
Yeah, it was actually, the story is the day my sister was born. We're 3 years apart, and our birthdays are just a couple days apart. And they overlooked my third birthday because my mom was in the hospital. And not that I would know this, I'm three, I didn't care. But the days my sister was born, he brought me home a guitar. He stopped on the way from the hospital at a music store, bought a guitar, and brought it home to me. He still doesn't know why. He said something just made him do it.
That's beautiful, man. I love that.
Yeah, so I know you started early on playing mandolin, but I don't actually know, was your family musical? Like, was there, a reason there or a connection?
Yeah. In my infancy, my grandfather played music, played fiddle and bluegrass and stuff. And there was a running joke in the family that there's an old bluegrass tune called "Bury Me Beneath the Willow." Right, it's a really sad song about guy, girlfriend, fiance, whatever, leaving him or whatever, and then he wants to be buried. It's really sad. Ironic thing is, apparently in the family, Grampsy would play that when I was like crying as an infant, and it would like soothe me. That's what he called. So the funny thing is, Grampsy played fiddle and mandolin and guitar and stuff, and mainly a fiddle player. Like, he didn't venture outside of the third fret, you know what I mean, when playing guitar, but fiddle and mandolin. And he had all daughters, and then one daughter had a son, me, and another daughter had another son, and within 6 months of each other. So my granddad, when we turned 5 and 6, he was like, here's some instruments. And then he became the organ grinder with his two monkeys, kind of thing. And so we hit up all the bluegrass festivals, and, I had a very blessed existence in that I was around live music so much. Live players. When there was picking, I was playing with other players a lot. And that was really like, I didn't realize how thankful I should be because of that, because most people don't have that kind of experience. And most people are playing along with records or what, you know what I mean? Kind of doing it like you said, where it's just your thing. Man,
it's interesting talking to a few guys like yourself who started in the bluegrass world and started either on guitar, mandolin, or whatever. I'm able to draw some parallels between not the isolation, but the close-knit small circle that is that world, and it's like blues music in some degree. It's a niche, you know what I mean? And you have people who are just love it and obsessed with it. It's its own world. So I was fortunate on the other end of the spectrum to be around this blues world when I was such a young kid and get to play with older cats constantly and be picking, their brains, but mostly just getting real world practical application and experience, which can't be replaced. And I'm sure you feel the same way about all that time, in those festivals and all that stuff.
I mean, really, that's the end game, right? In my head, when I think about the end game, it's like to play music with other humans, right? Yeah. And when you said real world experience, it's like, dude, here I am every weekend, and there's a jam circle, and it's all the standard tunes, and nobody's slowing the tempos down or altering the difficulty levels of Panhandle Rag or whatever you might be playing. It's like they're playing the tunes, and like being around it, it's almost like if you go to another country and you just got transplanted, you would learn the language a lot quicker because you're forced to. You know what I mean? Because that's the way everyone's talking around you. So in some kind of ways, music being a language, it's like that. And the blues festivals, and like you said, blues festivals and bluegrass festivals being kind of niche or whatever. Like I remember being at these bluegrass festivals when there'd be like 2,000 or 3,000, maybe 8,000 at Merle Fest. Then all of a sudden, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou happens. And at every college campus, everybody's getting a banjo and like learning. And now bluegrass festivals are gigantic. Like Telluride and Merle Fest are like hundreds of thousands of people. It's like a completely different culture than what I grew up in,
Yeah. Yeah. But that feeling of, when you're really young and you start to progress and get good, and you're surrounded by, seasoned veterans and older cats who have done it for a long time. There's always, yes, for the most part, they were always really helpful and encouraging. But then there's always that little bit of like, this is how you're supposed to do it, kid, which is really helpful, actually, and motivating. I remember clearly moments of, like you said, maybe I'm not ready to play that at the tempo they want to play it at, or this or that. And feeling so like, not just angry with myself, but also so extremely motivated that the next week I had it. I was just there. I was ready to go. And those little looks from your peers, and then the knowing look the next week when they see that you put in the work and you're ready, you got it then, that was like a drug to me, like of man, I just want that look from all these guys.
And it's like in like the nerd culture, it's the Jedi Council, right? You've got the elders of the genre that are playing, and they're comfortable playing all the tunes, and they know this huge vast library. And when they just give you a nod of approval, you're just like, I want to do that all the time, and get that nod of approval, and I think that has stayed the course for me through all the years. Is like there's nothing better than when the vibe is right on stage and you hear somebody on stage in the band, where the audience can't hear, but somebody in the band goes, yeah, it's like you're like, man, we're doing the thing, I miss that. I think that whole thing that we're talking about right now is one of the most things that I can't wait to get back when we get back to doing live stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the thing, we've spent our whole life dedicated to this one thing. And it's like, well, the 95% of it that I've dedicated my life to is gone. So now I'm making all of my joy from the 5% of the other stuff that I normally do, which is weird. Yeah. And frustrating. Dude. So okay, so you start going with your grandpa to all these places, and you're learning, you're growing. I mean, you're at what point do you kind of start thinking about? I know for me it was instantaneous, but like this is it. Like this is my life. I'm gonna, I'm not worried about college or maybe you still want to go to college, but you kind of know I found my thing.
Yeah. I think for me, I was around 15 years old, and I was going to Gatlinburg on the weekends. I lived in North Carolina and was going to Gatlinburg, and I would occasionally get to set in with at a bar, at a club, whatever. And there was a guy that owned and managed one of the theaters in Pigeon Forge. For those that don't know that are watching the show, Pigeon Forge is a lot like a Branson or like a Vegas without the casinos kind of thing, You got all the live shows of all the legacy artists, but you don't have, gambling. So a guy owned one of those theaters, invited me to play. His name was Billy Baker. And my parents both signed for me to say that I could live on my own out of state. And the high school principal allowed me, like, nobody really knew, right? Like, and it was one of those things where I had one strike. If I messed up once, it was over. But I was kind of living by myself and going and working in the theater, and I didn't play any electric guitar. I hadn't had any exposure to that. And then when I was about 15 or 16, I heard Brent Mason's solo on Pick It Apart and Mark O'Connor, New Nashville Cats. And that one changed my life, because that's what made me want to get my electric guitar out from under the bed, restring it, and like learn how to do it. So it was that and Eddie Van Halen. And I was working in, before I'd known who Steve Morse or Eric Johnson or any of those big influences were, a guy in the theater that I was working with, he was the electric guitar player. I was playing acoustic most of the night, and then they would let me do a feature because I'd won some contests and stuff as a teenager, and they kind of like did a little feature bluegrass spot or whatever. And he saw my picking hand. He was like, "Oh man, you must really love Paul Gilbert and Steve Morse." And I was like, "I don't know who these guys are." He's like, "What?" So he made me a mixtape, and it had, Too Many Notes by Steve, it had Scarified, For the Love of God by Vi, and Cliffs of Dover. And it's just like everything that I think I was supposed to know or I was supposed to at least heard at that point. So I heard that mixtape and went down to Disc Exchange, which was the local, CD spot, and got everything from all those guys. And just, that's where it really kind of hit the ground running. And about that time, it seemed like it wasn't too many years later that things became a little more accessible with more mass-produced live DVDs and people taking old REH videos and making them. It just seemed like it was a good time to like get stuff. Where previous, man, where are we going to find these clips of like Steve Morse playing? Like you couldn't. It was
impossible. It was impossible.
So that's where it like shifted, and then I got in a rock band. I went to college for a couple of years at UT for jazz, and ironically, I wasn't really into jazz. I was in school at the jazz program. Got more into jazz 6 years after I left jazz school than when I was there, as it goes. And I ended up leaving jazz school because I started getting calls as a session player in East Tennessee, and it was a thing where I could come in and cut all the acoustic and mandolin and stuff like that, even for bigger bands that maybe were like electric rock bands. I mean, when you cut acoustic, it's a different kind of muting and it's a different kind of thing. So I had a skill set there that allowed me to kind of, like you said, hang out with the big boys. Like all the session guys and producers were way older than me, but because I had a skill set, I was able to get in that world. And that's where, again, the life just changed. And it was like, okay, now I need to see how the session environment is and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, man, when you started, so how old were you when that guy gave you the tape?
17 or 18, like right in that age. And it was like, I remember 18 years old. It was like, all right, dude, Cliffs of Dover is the greatest thing I've ever heard. It was like that. I was like, what? How do you do it? I had a PV Bandit, Boss OD1, and a Dynacomp. That was my rig, and a blue Telecaster. And I was like, I don't even understand. The first time I saw Vi do one of these, like, I was like, that's impossible. He's not even picking the strings. That doesn't even make sense. I had no idea about legato or any of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was like culture shock, because the idea of being able to play more than one note without striking the string, or more than two notes without striking the string, that was like life on Mars, because
Yeah,
that doesn't happen on a Martin with 13s on it,
yeah. Well, so what did your grandfather and your circle from your the upbringing think when you started listening to that stuff and started playing electric guitar?
It was funny. My granddad never really cared about the electric guitar. He's like, you like that old rock stuff, don't you? He's like, I bet you like Keith Richards. I was like, yeah, man. We were like, yeah, I like Keith. Cool. But it was, with my granddad, every time we would get together, it would be, get the mandolin and play the Sam Bush and Bill Monroe tunes, But yeah, I mean, my family was always very supportive, but I have to say, in a big caveat with my family, is my mother's got really great ears. And she plays a little bit of piano in church, but she's got really good ears. And she always knew her favorite session players. Like, she loved Dan Huff. Like, that was, and like, so I was, I mean, like, my family was like way into it, even though she didn't play guitar or anything. Like, she knew who she liked. I'll never forget, she liked Brent Rowan a whole lot. Like, that was one of her guys, Okay. Yeah. And so my exposure, through that, I had a family was, they weren't afraid to say, hey, get that clean. Your tone's a little nasally, or whatever it may be. It's like, you can get that clean. That was, I guess, the number one thing that was floating around our house. It was like,
Interesting.
Yeah, and Brian too, and ironically, Brian and I grew up and both become pro level players. It's like he plays fiddle with Travis Tritt, and he's been with Tritt for 8 or 9 years. But yeah, I think a lot of that was due to the fact that our families, they didn't baby us, like, as far as like, oh, you're so good, nepotism, stage parents. Like, none of that was that was not in our house. And even today, when I have young cats come to clinics or whatever, I try to be very supportive and do this, and you can do it. But I also try to be like, hey man, you have to do the work. Like, it's not like you wake up and I said it once in a thing for local interview thing. They were like, I'm helping a young kid out named Hudson McCready, and his playing's really come a long ways, and he's 13. And I said in the interview, I was like, hey man, this ain't the kind of hobby or lifestyle where everyone gets a participation trophy. Like, there's a lot of really awesome players in the world, and if you want to play on that level, you really have to put in the hours. There's no substitute, But I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful if my family wasn't, stage parents. Like, my mom to this day, she doesn't come to a lot of gigs. I mean, she came to see me when I played the Opry for the first time and stuff like that. But in general, she's like, I'll see you. Yeah, I'll see it. Yeah. I'll see it at Thanksgiving or whatever,
Yeah, supportive, but not sugarcoating everything, Yeah. And that's important, So during that time, I'm 15. You already moved away to start playing, in gigs. But was there any music in school for you? I'm always curious about that with guys.
Yeah. Ironically, when I moved to Gatlinburg Pittman, I was in chorus. I couldn't be in band because what was I going to play? And like, even if it was a jazz ensemble, I didn't have the time because I was leaving around 2:00 in the afternoon during peak seasons to play the matinee shows. Yeah. So I wanted to take music class. So I took chorus, and she actually was extremely, extremely supportive. Her name was Ruth Lewis, and she would allow me to bring in my little amplifier and telly, and as the chorus things would be working on any kind of choral arrangements, she would set the chord charts down in front of me. So she didn't try to deviate the natural thing that I was on, the natural path that I was on. She was very supportive. During my lunch breaks, I would go get my lunch and go to her room and put headphones on and practice. It's like, so yeah, I mean, I didn't, I never, still not a strong sight reader or anything like that, but the support there and the encouragement and the, hey, you need to know what an F chord sounds like when a G's on the bass, like that, like it was that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, I feel like, guys are obviously progressing so much faster now because of the amount of information available to them, but that's music in the schools thing is missing. Like I
It
had
is.
music all through middle school, high school, even elementary school. I had like
Yeah.
ukulele
I had the
class and
plastic
yeah,
recorder. Is that
yeah,
what that thing is? Yeah, we had
yeah,
that, you know.
yeah.
And you know the interesting thing, and maybe the viewers could check this out if anyone's feeling benevolent out there. I'm going to do a plug. Friends over at Songbird Foundation in Chattanooga, Tennessee, they do a supporting the music and the arts in the surrounding areas of Middle Tennessee and Chattanooga specifically. And during COVID, even when school's in session, they don't allow any band practice. So
Mm,
Songbirds has been raising money and putting guitars in the classrooms.
yeah.
So if anyone wants to help out and feel free to jump to Songbirds. Those guys are really great. And I'm like you, Josh. It's like music in the schools, please. We need that. It's like a lot of good stuff came out of that.
Well, for me, it was like it reinforced what I was already working on at home. And it gave me a connection where I didn't feel outcast at school because all I cared about was music. And then it let me have some of that at school, which actually made a big difference in my like day-to-day school life, especially in high school when you can get, you can get kind of insulated and it was important for me to have that during school. I know, at least I know it was for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, same, dude. It's like just having those few moments, like I said, on a lunch break to play the guitar. It's like, man, it kept me, no matter what was going south for my day to day or what was going on in high school.
Exactly.
I think everyone experiences high school differently, but I guarantee you that everyone has a bad day in high school. Like that, that's a thing. So it definitely, was definitely a lifesaver for me. And I was lucky that my principal would let me just bail on my last period to go work.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool, man.
It was amazing, man. And I think that was a big part in due to the music culture in East Tennessee.
Mm.
Like just music in general is everywhere in Western North Carolina and East Tennessee. So there's a lot of value on it. And obviously in a town whose commerce is Dolly Parton and music, it's like I think there's a different value on it here than maybe say another city in America, somewhere in Iowa or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool. When were your first gigs on electric guitar?
They started creeping in those theaters.
Okay.
I remember one gig, the electric guitar player was going to be out, and it was like the matinee he didn't make. So we kind of limped through the show, and they're like, "What are we supposed to do? All this can't get a sub for for 2." I was like, "Well, I can go get my Telecaster, and we can like." At that point I graduated. I had a Subway Rocket from Mesa Boogie. It's like I graduated to tube amps, and so I went home and got that, and slowly started integrating in. And I remember ordering a really important guitar to me was a Fender '90s B-Bender Telecaster. I ordered it in white, and it came in black because sometimes Fender doesn't pay attention. But it played so good, I kept it. And so that guitar had a lot of mileage. I put two or three different sets of frets on it over the years. It's like I really cut my teeth on that guitar, and that's the one I played at Guitar Mageddon and all that stuff. So
Right.
a lot of that, like 17 through 22 years old, that was like, and I was clubbing at that point. Like my days were getting really long, going from the summer of my senior year of high school to the freshman year of college. Like I was going to class, playing the afternoon matinee, playing the evening show, and then clubbing that night till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but man, that type of like we said earlier, just that type of that amount of real world experience is like, man, you grow so fast.
Dude,
Like
you
every
really
week
do.
you feel like you've taken another step.
And if you obviously the answer there is like, look how much your playing grows, but just pause that because that's such an obvious one. Where a lot of players grow is like your pedal dies, get through the rest of the gig. Just like those fundamental things of like something really goes south and
Yeah.
you've got another 45 minutes in the evening or another hour and a half to play. it's like that'll really put some mileage on you and knock the green off in a
Oh,
hurry.
100%. That, the little things that make you a professional. Learning that your guitar's intonation sucks because you never played enough with other cats, and it's like, okay, I got to get, or that, you never change tubes in your amp, you know what I mean? And then finally it fails when you start to actually push it, or your cables suck and you're getting noise all the time and all
Yeah.
that stuff. You only, there's no way to learn that other than on the job. There's really no way.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's one of the things that is the transition from the young cat to the old cat. The old cats had a lot of blown tubes and a lot of bad amps go. It's like outside of the playing. And I love that.
Yeah. So what was that time, I guess, between 17 and 22 when you're gigging a ton and you're growing a ton? When does it become obvious that, okay, I mean, I guess it's already obvious this is it. You found your
Senior
path.
year of high school, I was like, I'm not gonna do anything else.
Yeah.
Like even like when it was like go to college, it was like, yeah, I'm going for music or I'm not going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when did things change slightly from, okay, maybe I just want to make a living as a musician, to maybe I want to do my own thing as a musician?
Well, that was interesting. That was a long journey. That was about 8 years of journey, maybe a few years longer. The rock band that I had was right on the verge of, I don't want to say breaking, but it's like we were dealing with the big producers. We were like,
Yeah.
and we did some tracks with a guy named Nick Raskulinix, who like Dave Grohl and all those guys. I mean, Nick's done some amazing records, Alice in Chains, Elton John, Rush, all that stuff. So we did some tracks with Nick, and that band had some opening, when you're opening to the opener kind of thing. But we were going out with other hard rock bands like, Seven Dust. We toured with those guys, and various different, hard rock acts. And funny enough that those relationships still exist to this day. Like Clint Lowry and I still chit chat to this day. And
Right.
it's funny that band kind of, the nature of the radio rock thing kind of shifted during all of that. So I got on a gig where I was playing. It was a benefit for the Deftones bass player, and it was a lot of hard rock guys, and they needed a ringer for the gig. It was basically an all-star benefit for his health, needs, fundraiser type of thing. And there was, so-and-so from, Atreyu, and then so-and-so from Breaking Benjamin, and so-and-so from whatever, and POD. And like, so they needed one guitarist that could be a ringer in case they had the star drummer and the star bass player, but they didn't have a star guitar player for the song, right? So I was the ringer and made friends with it, who was at that time playing the drums with Breaking Benjamin. And then Scott Stapp and Alter Bridge and Scott Stapp became a thing that were independent of each other. And then so I was on the Scott gig, and then I got promoted to musical director on that gig, and then the Rascal Flatts gig, and then various other small little runs with whoever, like Low Cash or Gary Allen or whoever. And that was a long time. That was like 8 years of my life, maybe 9 years of my life. And then from there, it was the Low Cash gig. We were doing 150, 180 shows a year. I mean, it was like pedal to the metal. And at that point I'd already made a couple of solo records, and I'd had my hands in solo stuff, but solo was a hobby. That was a way I could play a lot of notes. You know what I mean? On the side.
Of course. Yeah.
Get it out of my system,
Yeah.
So I did Disconcerting Amalgam, and then a few years later I did Truth and Lie. And then, it was really around the Low Cash time where I was like, man, my career as a sideman is only as good as the artist. And by that, I don't mean their value. I mean, they could just decide they don't want to tour anymore. Yeah. They could retire. They could do, if you were working for a female artist, they could get pregnant. You know what I mean? It's like, who knows what can happen? And so at that point, I was really taking a reflection. I was like, do I want to do the sideman thing forever? Do I want to try to step out? And I had started doing some some of the Sir factory parties and more NAMM stuff and being featured a little bit more. And I think that's the nature of the game, though, right? If you're kind of in the big hired gun group of players and there's a NAMM thing, you get calls to go.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of that. And so I think that really held my hand into really pouring myself into a record, which was Junktown. And that was like the record where I really started to find my voice in instrumental music. Previously to that, I segregated things. Like on Truth and Lie, it's a 24-song album. Half the record's an acoustic album, half the record's an electric record. And the title track is on both sides as two different types of song, right? So I was always separating my bluegrass, southern, even Allman Brothers influences and more fusion influences and rock influences. Like I always kept things kind of separated. And you can hear it in the older songs on the older albums. Junktown was the first time I was like, well, why can't I have this blend of southern and rock and fusion and stuff? Like, why can't it all sit in the same song, not just on the same record? And obviously there's a direct line of influence to the Dixie Dregs. Like they kind of blend a lot of that stuff. And that record was really important. And I think the guitar community digging it was like a big, hey, you can do this. You know what I mean? You can step out and do your own thing. And I think that wasn't a decision that I made for myself as much as it was that I had affirmation from people that I respected. And I had plenty of emails and messages of guys being like, hey, man, I love this song. Do you have tabs for it? And I'm just like, what? you know? So that was really important. So that was like, I guess what I just gave you was like 11 years of my life just all crammed together.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it happens while it's happening. You don't notice it, but it happens the way it's supposed to happen. It's like when I moved to LA, we're talking, almost 20 years ago. I mean, 2002. I came here to stop doing what I was doing. I had done nothing but play the blues and put out records and tour in a van and beat my head against the wall. So then I decide, okay, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to be a sideman. And that works. Like I actually make a living and I start to do a decent amount of sessions. I start to go out on the road with different artists doing stuff. And like you said, my name started to grow in a way that it never used to when I was just doing my own thing back in the blues world, because I was getting more known just now as like a guitar player. And so like guitar people were starting to be interested and those things started to happen. So I'd make a record, like you just said, that was more like a calling card record of here's a bunch of guitar shit, and blah, blah, blah. So I made that record. But I really started to have the realization while my reach was growing, my money was coming from these gigs that, like you said, could end like that. And they kept ending like that. It was be a year of great money and great gigs and touring, and then 6 months of absolutely nothing. And then 8 months of touring, and then 3 months of nothing.
And that's the thing. And a lot of times you can end those gigs and then be on great terms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very common. I think that's more common than the bad firing or whatever, it's like,
but nobody tours year round and nobody pays you retainer anymore. It's like, you're not getting, they love you, but still they're not going to pay you for doing nothing. It's not like the old days. And I just realized, is this what I want the rest of, like because I could have blinked and 30 years would have gone by of me being a sideman, just hustling my ass off forever. And where would I be at the end of that 30 years? And I just wasn't sure that that's what I wanted. Excuse me. And so, it was like it naturally pushed me more towards my own thing, especially now people seem to care more. And it was weird. It just kind of happens.
Yeah. And like you said, it's like I think for me, there were certain gigs that were like these milestone flags as you're climbing Mount Everest.
Sure.
Goals. And one was like, man, I'd love to play arenas. Like, I don't know why that was a goal for me, but like, it was like cliche guitar player dream. And when that happened, I was like, oh man, sick, dude. I'll never forget I was with the Flats, and the picture that CMA Fest used was all three Flats and me right in the middle with that big lime green, sir. And I was like, I know I'm not the artist or anything, but this is so cool. We're going to play, and it's going to be, 150,000 people in Nissan Stadium. Holy cow, what's happening, And then the reality is once you do one of those, there's no higher unless you're the artist.
Yep.
Because what are you going to do? Shift from that to maybe a gig like Justin from Pink? Like if Justin left Pink and he goes to Carrie Underwood, you're going, across. Yeah. So the only way to go bigger, if that's something that matters, is being the artist yourself. Now, to me, one of the things that matters more than anything is musical satisfaction. And when the world started, the world as in the guitar community started to appreciate, kind of dig into what I was doing, and like the money was rolling to where I could be my own artist, man, that value of being able to make my own music and just put out an EP of this stuff that I like. And it's like that musical gratification is a lot higher when you're creating the music than if you're trying to perfect something that somebody else created.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no feeling like releasing something and knowing it has, even if it's a small audience, an audience of people that are interested in it. It's like I'm so grateful for the fact that if I put out a piece of music today without even telling anybody, a good number of just my normal people would buy it right away. Yeah. And that's an amazing feeling that you can't, you never take that for granted. Yeah.
Man, absolutely not. And one thing that hits me in the heart really is like when guys are like, man, I was just having a rough day and this came on my shuffle, and your tune came on my shuffle. It's like, dude, when that becomes a language between strangers, like, holy cow, maybe that's like my hippie side showing or whatever, but like, man, I love that. That makes me feel good, and I think when you use the term drug, it's like, once you're high on that, that's the only drug you want, and that's a very inspirational, motivational type of feeling too, where it's like you pour a little bit more into each song and each creation after that.
100%. It's such a motivating factor and great feeling that it helps you stay feeding it. Like you go further and further towards doing this thing that is so gratifying, so much so that you'll turn down other work, sideman, where I still get called for stuff and I will turn it down because it doesn't feed that, where the effort where I'm putting in and the gratification that I get back from it. Because there is a moment of shit or get off the pot when you do make this decision to do your thing all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't keep jumping back and forth. It's not possible.
That's like the Miyagi thing.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, if you walk in the middle of the road, and it's true. So yeah, with that said, man, some of the most fun times I've had over recent years have been things that I've even had you on. It's like when I got to the point where I was throwing together my own shows, and having, NAMM's a great excuse to have a show full of guitar players. And I noticed that nobody was really doing it. Like if a manufacturer didn't put it on, like if Ibanez didn't do it or Sir or whoever, then like the shows weren't like they used to be. Even when I was going originally as a young cat. And then I was like, well, I talked to my manager and I was like, well, what's it take? Like, what we got to do to like just put together our own show? And so that kept growing too. And then it turned into the Woodshed Camp, which has been really cool. And I got to figure out how to get you at it as a side note. But yeah, once you're at a point where you're putting together your own events, it definitely only feels like work up until you hit the stage. And then when you look across the stage and it was like the jams that we were doing with Phil and Ariel, I was like, this didn't work. This is amazing. This is just fun,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. We can complain all we want and get frustrated about, oh, I'm trying to get to this level, or, oh, it's so much. It's a lot of effort to do the stuff that we do. But when you're out there playing for people and you're playing music that is yours and they care, it's all worth it anyways. All that goes away.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, crazy, man. Dude, let's well, actually, before we get into the 10 questions, I did want to ask you a little bit about the Guitarmageddon thing, because I remember from afar back then wondering like who was going to win this thing, and what was it really like for you? Was it surreal or was it just kind of like normal?
It was funny. It was really funny. So at the time, I'd been playing electric guitar for about 3 years. It was that thing where I entered, the contest is 6 months long ish.
Yeah.
And I entered when I was 21 and won it when I was 22. It was like a cusp thing. But I've been playing electric guitar for about 3 years, really intensely. Up until that point, it was all the bluegrass stuff. So, at the same time, I was really into sports cars. Like, it was right about the time that like Fast and Furious and all that culture was going on. I had a 1994 twin turbo Supra. All my buddies had RX-7s and Vipers and Supras and stuff, and we would go out on Friday night. And a lot of times they would come to whatever club I was playing at. We would hang out and, be college kids before, and then we would hang out and be college kids after, but I would,
Sure.
they would just hang out while I clubbed. And at the University of Tennessee, it was a great time to be playing live music because, it was party central, so it was super fun. Had to go to Guitar Center that evening before dinner. We would always go get all the cars out, shine them up, and go to dinner. Went to Guitar Center, had to buy some strings. And I saw something, don't even recall what it was, but I'm noodling on it. I was like, it's kind of cool, man, like whatever, and go to put it back. And guy comes up to me and it's like, bro, you should totally enter Guitar-mageddon. You could totally win, bro. And I was like, he's like one of the guys that worked there. And I was like, what? Guitar-mageddon? This sounds like something out of Spinal Tap. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm done with contests. I did that as a kid. I had this whole like prolific, way of looking at it. My buddies had a better way of looking at it where they go, bro, if you enter, we'll buy your bar tab all weekend. I was like, done. Okay. You're buying dinner and my bar tab. I'll enter this stupid contest. Let's go. And it was like a joke. So I came back on Wednesday night. It was like the following Wednesday. Entered, won the store, and then got a call from one of the guys, Mike. And he said my score was high enough to go to the regional. I was like, well, what does that mean? And he was like, bro, it's like, we're going to fly you down to Disney World and you're going to play at the House of Blues and be you and 6 other guys. I was like, well, that sounds amazing. They're like, yeah, we'll pay for everything, So I get down there. My buddy Bubba Casey went with me. He was one of the other car guys. And and then a bunch of my car guys drove to Florida because it's not that far from Tennessee. And we just had a weekend of it. And I took an acoustic guitar just to kind of hang out by the pool and pick up chicks or whatever. And I didn't have any rig. So I just took a chord. I mean, that's how they had like Marshalls that had clean and dirty. It's like, that's fine. Plug into that, And I get there and dudes had these big boomerang loopers. One guy had an eventide rack. Another guy had a pedal board like what I've got down here, which is like the RJM switcher and all this stuff. And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? And Bub goes, hey man, just play your acoustic. So like I did my play along with the track thing. And then for my freestyle, I just played acoustic, and just kind of went back to my roots and did some grass stuff and won. And then went to the final in Las Vegas. The cool thing was we were all the regional winners were going to be, we were the opening act for Cheap Trick at House of Blues. So I was like, dude, we're going to Vegas, Cheap Trick, gonna be awesome. Win or lose, it's a party. It's great. So luckily, man, and all those guys there could have won. It was just happened to be my day. It's like when you have a good day, it just happened to be your day where you played good, And so ended up winning. And by that point, you got to understand, you've won 15 grand in stuff. Like I won the Music Man let me design a guitar. I'd won one of everything Line 6 made. And like, it's like I had tons of stuff. So they cut me a $10,000 check as like one of the grand prize things. And my granddad had always wanted a D45. And, he was a construction worker, didn't have it. So Guitar Center told Martin what I wanted to do. So they gave me the Martin D45 that's in the catalog from that year. And they gave it to me for $10,000. It should have cost a lot more, but they, and so I gave that to my granddad, and that was like the culmination of the story. So, it was surreal for sure. Like every point of it, was kind of, truth is stranger than fiction, I guess. And, I was just fortunate that the dice fell in my favor. And, man, it was, any part of it was awesome,
I remember, there was, even before that, there was like a kind of like steps ladder of all these contests back then, and it was like it was always interesting seeing what happened to the guys that won, and
Yeah, and
seems
there was
like a
like
lot of them have
3,000
ended up to
people.
go. What?
I said there was like 3,000 people that entered it. Like it was an insane amount. Like I remember getting the Guitar Center catalog after I'd won it, and they put the stats on there. I was like, "Holy cow! I didn't know this was this big of a deal."
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it was, and to as a guy that didn't have a ton of money, it was really like those Line 6 amps, man. That's what I played. Like that's what I had. I didn't have anything nicer. It's like, so until that allowed me to make enough money, that's what and I played that Music Man, it was the nicest guitar I had. And so it was definitely beneficial in more ways than just, hey, I'm champion or whatever. It's like,
yeah.
and to see my granddad's face when I handed him that D45.
Oh, I can't imagine. That
Yeah,
must
it was
have been
priceless.
amazing.
Yeah, that was worth it all.
Yeah. Cool, man. Thanks for telling me that story. I wanted to hear about it. All right, dude. Let's get into the 10 questions. Number 1, when you first started playing, maybe it was on mandolin and not guitar, but when you first started learning and playing stuff, what was the first tune, riff, lick, anything that once you kind of figured it out, it was like that, it set that hook, like, oh my God, I can't believe I figured this out and I played it right. That magic feeling of, well, there's no turning back now,
Yeah. The first tune I ever learned was Boil Them Cabbage Down, which is an old fiddle tune my granddad taught me. And the first tune that I really fell in love with was an old Bill Monroe tune called Jerusalem Ridge. And when I could play all the way through Jerusalem Ridge, I was like, I'm awesome.
Man, there's nothing like that feeling when you finally learn something you've listened to maybe a million times.
Yep.
And then you got it.
That's right.
There's no turning back after that.
Yeah, you're done. You're hooked.
Yeah, you're hooked. Yeah. Do you remember the first solo you ever learned note for note?
Sam Bush, Glamour and Grits. The song was Stingray. I learned that when I was mandolin tune, obviously. And basically that whole record, like I learned Brilliancy and What You Say, and I learned all that stuff.
Wow. That's hard stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, I was a 15-year-old kid with nothing better to do. Boredom is a powerful ally.
Oh, man. All right, number 3. What's the first thing you play these days when you pick up a guitar? Do your hands just go somewhere automatically, like autopilot?
Okay. If it's a Dreadnought, I will go straight to the G run, the Bluegrass Dale McCurry G run. I'll play something way down there and let those open strings kind of do their thing. If it's a hollow body, probably some kind of swing lick, Western swingism. Tellies, I always test them back pickup. I got to know that the back pickup on a Telecaster does its thing. So usually some kind of chicken picking thing there. And then with Strats, it's more of the, big Texas kind of lick, like Timmons or EJ or something like that. Like I want that soaring Landau Luke kind of thing. So it really, I think the answer is which guitar am I picking up? And it kind of tells me what to play.
Interesting. What about like when you're at the gig and you're getting ready for sound check and you first
Junktown. Junktown was written from being a sound check. Like that song, that riff, I sound checked with that riff and like a simple version of it. I didn't even have it. And that was just for my front of house guy to get the levels. And I would just sit there and do that for, 20, 30 seconds. And all of a sudden somebody was like, hey man, you ought to write a tag to that and make that. That's kill. It's like, so to this day, that riff still is like my sound check riff.
Nice. All right. Number 4. What key, style, song, groove, whatever, do you hear when you're like doing, when you're cooking breakfast or you're riding, a bike or whatever? Do you have something that's always kind of in there? Like for me, I'm always, when I'm not doing anything, unless I'm working on something and I've got a specific influence that pops in my head, when I'm just on neutral, I'm always hearing something swinging, like a shuffle or a swing with some, either B.B. King or Charlie Parker type stuff over the top of it. Something very, triplety based and swinging. Do you have stuff like that that's just always in there?
Yeah, it's really fiddle tuney type of sound and stuff. And even in my writing for my rock fusion kind of thing, that fiddle tune thing sneaks in there. Like if
Mm.
anybody's got my song Forgotten Secrets, that was actually written on mandolin, and it's usually stuff like skidin duddy, it's like that rolling Bela
Yeah,
Fleck thing,
yeah.
a lot of that, a lot of strong 2 and 4.
Were you speaking of Bella Fleck? Were you a Flecktone? Do you like the Flecktones? When you're...
Anything Bela Fleck has ever done, I love.
Oh yeah,
Obviously, Flecktones can get really weird,
yeah,
really quick.
yeah,
But man, hearing Bela's banjo and his lines and the way he puts things together has been one of the single biggest inspirations of my electric guitar playing.
yeah. I remember as a kid, I I don't think I was hip enough on the first couple of records. I was too young as well, and I was a blues guy, so I don't think I heard it. And then they did the live record, live art, and I think that was pretty much like my freshman year of high school or something like that. And I went and saw them, and I just lost my mind. Like
Yeah.
I just like this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's the whole experience, of Future Man and all the craziness.
Victor and the whole
Yeah,
deal.
Victor,
Yeah.
it was the whole thing. But man, for a while there, then I just became obsessed with everything Bela Fleck. And
Yeah.
I searched out every record. I went and saw him play duo with Edgar Meyer. I went and saw him anytime I could. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I forget about it too. Recently, I was in the car with my son, and it came on my Spotify. Actually, that live art album came on, and I was like, "Man, I feel like I'm in ninth grade again. Like this is amazing."
Yeah, the Helicasters records do that to me.
Yeah,
Like that's a time warp for me. When I hear Return of the Helicasters, if it pops on my shuffle, it's like I'm immediately a junior in high school. Yeah, the Fleck, my favorite Fleck is probably Drive. I really love that record.
I like
That's a
that.
good
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, man. Yeah, love that stuff. All right, number 5. When did you feel like maybe you started to find your voice on the guitar? Was there a moment you can remember making conscious choices like, "Ooh, this feels like different and maybe like my thing. I'm going to go further that way."
Yeah, definitely the album Junktown. Previously to that, I was playing from more of a mind space of I'm going to do this because I can, or I'm going to do this because, so and so will like it, or it sounds like so and so, or it's good because I've heard a version of it from so and so, and I was anchoring value in other people's opinions across the board,
Yeah.
And Junktown was a thing where I was making a conscious effort to like, man, I'm gonna do what I think is cool, and I think that comes from a point of I was always so afraid of the country aspect of my playing and the southern aspect of being hokey or cheesy, because a lot of instrumental guitar players, they will release a country sounding
Yes.
song and it's always so cheesy and it never sounds authentic, and and to me that kind of country playing it kind of turns me off a little bit. It's not like when I hear, like Albert Lee or Brent or something like that. Like that's like terrifying. Like that level of playing is, or Danny Gatton or something, like that's not cheesy or hokey. It's just terrifying. So it's like, I wanted to, with the album Junktown, that's when I really started being like, man, I'm going to do this Southern thing. And it's not cheesy. Like, I don't think any of these songs are cheesy. They're not like cliches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big conscious effort.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, what about now? Do you still find yourself kind of like purposely making certain choices because they feel
Yeah.
more like you?
Yeah.
Or
I'm
is it just
looking for
natural now,
me.
100%?
I'm looking for me at the forefront of everything these days.
Yeah.
And I used to be a little bit more of like, oh, they're going to. Now, if I'm on a session or if I'm on a sideman gig, I play whatever's needed. Yeah. But in general, I'm looking for like, what would I play? Not like I'm going to play the Luke thing or I'm not going to quote and if I do something like that, I want it to feel a bit like an inside thing for the audience and myself to enjoy together.
Right.
Like if I quote some kind of Eric Johnson-esque kind of passage, I want people to be like, oh man, that's an EJ thing. Like that's like meant for everyone to enjoy,
Yeah. What's cool too is now when you and I probably do sessions, or at least I know for me, because of whatever. Not that we're famous or anything, but we've reached some level of notoriety as a player. The calls that I get now, they just want me to be me anyways, which is
Yeah,
really nice.
I've
Yeah.
noticed I've getting that a lot more too. It's like, hey man, what would you do over this? And it used to be a little bit more like, hey man, I need a Brad Paisley kind of riff here.
Yep.
And now it's like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it means I actually get less sessions than I did before, but the ones that I do get, they just want me to be me.
And that's valuable.
Yeah.
So valuable.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, number 6. What do you consider your biggest weakness on guitar? I'm very curious to know what you think is your weakness.
I rush really bad. If I get excited, I will rush.
Okay.
But if I've got, but that's, hey, that goes into tying into, I want to hire a bad to the bone rhythm section.
Yeah.
And when I do sessions or whatever, it's like clicks going, it's like, I'm fine. But like if I'm playing by myself, I kick something off, like I'll rush it, you know?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, God, it's like give anybody 20 years of obsessing over Sam Bush and Del McCurry. And it's like, yeah, of course they rush.
Of course. Yeah. But
Yeah.
dude, you got to be thinking of some of that stuff is so technically precise that you're thinking about things like you got to be thinking about fingerings, like so specific about some of that stuff. When I think specifically about fingering fast passages, that's when I rush too. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, that's the thing is you're really and some of those tempos are ambitious, you know.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the thing, and I think if any guitar player is really being honest with themselves, a weakness for all of us is constantly trying to find a better version of our own playing, to be the best version of ourselves, right? Like, I mean, I love that quote about that Steve Vai said, "If you want to sound like me, you've got to sound like you."
Yeah.
And that's a great quote.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, it's also our, biggest motivator. It's like I want to be, better tomorrow. I want to find the better version of me every day. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Who's a huge influence on your guitar playing that people would be surprised to hear?
Pavarotti.
Really? See,
Yeah.
now that you got me, I'm surprised. Okay, in what way?
Nessun Dorma from whichever opera I can't remember which one it is that it's from, but it's Nessun Dorma. The three tenors. I've listened to so many versions of that song, but Pavarotti sang with the thing that I want to find, that I want to play with. Like everybody in that world is a really fabulous tenor. There's great tenors everywhere. Being a tenor in opera is kind of like being a guitar player. It's the quarterback. You know what I mean? It's like that's the glory position. And Pavarotti just surpassed every cliche of being a tenor. Like when he sings, I don't hear opera. I just hear this magic. Like he's like Jeff Beck or something. You know what I mean?
It's funny you say that. See, I haven't listened to a ton of opera music, but when I do listen to stuff that grabs me, I instantly relate it to listening to saxophone players. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
playing long notes and melodies and ballads. Like to me, when I hear an opera that nails me, it's the same I feel when I listen to Naima or something by
Yeah.
Coltrane.
Yeah.
It's that feeling that I get. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if I said Chick Corea, people would be like, oh, I've heard him cover Spain, or like, it's like, but I think nobody would really be like, hey man, that guy likes Pavarotti.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. I like it. All right. Okay. In a gig situation, would you rather have a great guitar and a shitty amp, or vice versa? A great
guitar,
amp
shitty.
and a whatever guitar.
Great guitar.
Really? You'd pick the guitar.
I'd pick the guitar.
Okay,
You give
see,
me,
I'm the
you give me,
opposite.
you give me this whiskey or this black Sir with a PV Bandit, I'll get the job done. Like it's
I'm
about
100% the opposite.
it's about what my hands touch.
Okay.
Like to me, the hand, it's like I'm driving this thing, and it's almost like the guitar in a lot of ways is like the tires between the driver and the road.
Well, I'm the opposite.
if you handed me like one of those paper thin picks, it would be like kryptonite. You would just watch it crumble in front of you. Like I gotta have, like it's gotta feel right over here. And that's something I still struggle with to this day because I want a heavier string in my right hand and I want a lighter string in my left hand, especially these days where I'm doing all this faux slide stuff.
Yeah. It's funny, man. The pick, I think, yeah, the pick can be, I mean, if I had to play, if you forced me to play a gig through a jazz course, I'd be terrible. I've done enough of those where I know, okay, I need the amp more than the guitar because I've done enough fly gigs in my life, thousands of them, where I've had my guitar, my pedal board, and I was forced to play through a Red Knob Twin or a JC120 or a Crate, and it was a horrible gig. You know, not that I didn't pull it off. That's different. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, in your heart, that's terrible. Whereas if I had, a decent amp, a Fender amp with some verb and whatever, I'd have had a better night. But the pick,
That's super interesting.
you forced me to play a gig with a fucking Jazz 3 pick, I couldn't even function. The gig it wouldn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy what we value, and like what we go to.
There's no way I could play a whole night's gig with a Jazz 3 pick. Wouldn't nothing would happen. It wouldn't be possible.
Which pick do you use, Josh?
I use a gravity pick that's like a Fender heavy
yeah.
shape, 1.1
Yeah.
millimeter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just has a bit of a grip on it.
Yeah, mine. So on mandolin and acoustic, I use these big blue chips, and then this is roughly the size of a Jazz 3. And then on electric, I use that. So you can see how much more pick I use when I'm playing like dreadnought stuff or mandolin stuff.
See, when I pick up a Jazz 3 and play guitar, it's like I can't even hit the strings with it. My fingers, I got ham hands,
Which is funny because Joe plays with a Jazz 3, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Yeah. It wears it out.
Especially if I try to play chords with the Jazz 3, forget about it. It's like
It's like nothing.
No, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so maybe you've just discovered that the pick is the most important part of the equation.
It is a big part of the equation. It definitely is a big part.
Yeah.
All right. Number 9. What keeps you motivated to continue working on being a better player, a better musician, to just keep moving forward? We've all known guys who, especially as kids who we looked up to, who maybe reach a level of contentment and they don't keep growing as a musician.
Yeah, they rest
Not that
upon
they
their
get
laurels.
worse. Yeah, resting on laurels. Yeah. Yeah. What keeps you from doing that? From pushing forward all the time?
One is just the love of music and the seeking to, I just want to sound better. Like I still play fiddle tunes that I grew up on. I just want to play them better. Right. And truthfully, the other one is my friends, guys like you, guys like Mark, guys that I'm, it's a lot like a sports team. You surround yourself with those that make you push, and that's valuable. Like I can't thank all of my friends that I've met in the industry enough for the inspiration. Like it's great. I always call Andy Timmons Obi-Wan because over the past couple of years we've become buds and I've learned so much, and it's not been like he's been like teaching me. It's just being in that energy, like that inspiration. So like, yeah, man, like you're an inspiration, and Travis Toy is an amazing inspiration, and my cousin Brian, and then every player that I see, it's like, yeah, man, the ones that speak to me when they play, yeah, like Joey Landreth, like when he plays, it gives me a feeling of like, holy cow, I want to, not only do I love that, but I want to better myself. Yeah. And a lot of times these days, it's a lot of slide players.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I don't play any slide. It speaks to me,
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, obviously, you surround yourself with friends, and we have talented friends. So it's like we're always around guys who just, wow, I can't do that. Like that's amazing. I'd like to learn how to do that. And it does. It keeps you pushing forward. And I mean, I've always felt like, I don't know about you, there's two things that have driven me most of my lifetime playing guitar. One was I always had a little bit of an obsessive streak about maintenance, like never going backwards. Like I saw, because I played with guys so much older than me as such a young kid, I would see certain guys it was very vivid to me, see guys lose ability. You
Lose
know what
the
I mean? When
edge.
they would
Yeah,
get,
yeah, yeah.
and so that was important to me, the maintenance. And then the other side was like, I always kind of felt like a responsibility to
Yeah.
this that's brought me everything that is good in my life to like give it back as much effort
That's right.
as the things that it's given me, you know?
And you know what's interesting when you watch cats get older to where, like, let's say, I'm trying to remember. So I was at a sound check. I'm friends with Dave Weiner, right? And him and Vi were playing like Asheville or something. And somebody in the fan, you know how you can buy the VIP early
Yeah, sure.
things and spend some time with artists. So I was just kind of on the side in the wings or whatever. But a fan asked if Steve was going to play. I don't remember the tune. I think it was Blue Powder or something like that. Steve's like, man, I just can't execute it consistently. He's like, I'm glad I recorded it. I'm glad I toured it when I did. I just don't, and I don't, forgive me if that's not the specific tune, but it was
Yeah.
one of those freak show tunes, you know, that just,
Yeah.
and I love watching artists age gracefully. That's really important to me. And watching someone like Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, like the music that John Paul Jones has shifted to making and Robert Plant, it's amazing. And it's not resting upon laurels. It's not trying to be 22-year-old Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And Jeff Beck's the same way. Like, I'm going to say, this is a hot take. Get ready. Comment section is going to hate me for it. My favorite Jeff Beck record, Emotion Commotion.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that I heard that and it just spoke to me. Like, it was just like he came out, and that's come from a guy blow by blow, all the things that like define the guy, but like Emotion Commotion. And that's not 28-year-old Jeff Beck, you know?
No. No.
You know?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I struggle. That's when I struggle with, like, I felt it even during this pandemic, like shit has gone away. And it's not because I'm not playing. I'm playing tons, but I'm not playing in the way that I'm used. I'm not playing with guys, you know? My
There's a
biggest muscle
difference
is like the link between my head and my hands, my improvisational muscle, and that shit's going away. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Because
Yeah.
improvising is a conversation with other musicians. And right now, you and I sitting in our studios, we're talking to ourselves when we improvise.
Yeah. Yeah, improvising in a vacuum is just it's not real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said this in an interview the other day because someone asked me, you know, how much guitar are you playing these days? And I said, tons. I'm playing tons. But it's, you know, they were trying to, so you're probably playing great. And I said, no, I feel like I'm playing horrible. And it's like, why? You know, and I was like, because I just can't get that feeling that I need. Like, there's no dynamics sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not playing with dynamics.
I was just talking to one of my Patreons. I run a Patreon page, and I was telling them, I was like, yeah, man, I've really struggled with like feeling good about my playing recently. With the loss of my grandfather a couple of weeks ago, culminating with the pandemic, like where we're not it's like all of this negative energy. And then on top of it, I'm not playing with any guys. I've had this weight on me of like, I don't feel good when I play. But the thing is I don't back off. Like I was sitting here practicing before our call, you know, it's like,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll get it back, you know.
we'll get back.
And
Make a call.
We'll have new shit to bring in when we get it back. But it's gonna, man, I don't. It's like those first couple gigs back, like when I don't want anybody to see those gigs.
Yeah,
I'm
not. Can we have a no cell phone clause on the first month of live gigs?
Yeah, that's how I feel about it for sure.
Same, bro. Same.
Oh man. All right, number 10. Are you a guy who has a 5-year plan, or are you a guy who flies by the seat of his pants? And I mean, do you set goals for yourself? Is there some specific shit that you want to accomplish in the next 5 years, or is it just let's see what happens?
I set goals that aren't on a time frame. It was like I was talking about, like I want to play arenas. Like as a kid, you know, it's like I set goals that I don't really. This one sounds really trivial and cliche, but as a kid, I always thought it'd be awesome to have my own signature model guitar. Like I think everybody kind of think, you know, we all think that, you know, and it's when I set goals, it's stuff that like is just this thing, and it's not like I'm a horrible planner. I'm much better like adapting as we go, especially on tour. You kind of get good at that skill set when you're on tour because nothing is really best laid plans shift. But But as far as the next 5 years, man, I would, God, next 5 months, like who knows because of the pandemic. But in a perfect world, I want to get back to playing live. I want to be playing. I've got 2 half-baked records in the oven right now, and I want to get those out. And I would love it if the guitar community and everyone would, maybe give a chance for some more Kennedy Wood stuff. Like, it's kind of funny that we were right on the verge of doing a ton of stuff right before the pandemic, and that band's been really rewarding to me because that's not a shred rock, that's not a notey gig. That's a better way to word it. It's just kind of, that band's got more in common with Marshall Tucker or Allman Brothers or Chris Stapleton than it does with like Guitar Hero antics. But that's a very rewarding gig because Dave and I write everything. And it's just Dave and I. Like, that's like the way we write is like I write the music and then he puts the lyrics to it. And that's not because I don't write lyrics or Dave doesn't write music. That's just kind of the formula we use. Sure, and that provides a very rewarding thing. You know what I mean? Yes. So yeah, when I think of goals and 5 years, it's like, man, I just want to make stuff. I want to play live again. And I would like to play some bigger. I mean, I guess it'd be fair to say it's like, yeah, man, if Kennedy Wood was playing Royal Albert Hall and Red Rocks, like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. But hey, we got to be allowed to play outside first before we can play anywhere. So hopefully we could get some things right with this pandemic and get the gigging again.
Yeah, I struggle with long-term planning. I have like levels that I would like to reach, but I don't have like, drawn out plans for how to get there.
Well, it's funny because that's an energy. You're putting an energy into something, and then that's not something that I find very a rewarding space to put my energy. My thing is like, if my goal is just doesn't have a time limit on it, and I'm just saying like, hey, I want this band to be huge, or hey, I want, whatever. That's a musical thing. Immediately that makes me put my energy into, we need to write really great songs. I need to practice and get better at the guitar. I need to get better tone. I need to, I took some time during the like, honestly, I thought we would be out of the pandemic by now. So at the end of the summer, I was rewiring my main live board and I was spending my time getting ready to go back out, And so, I mean, I'm always kind of looking to get back out on the road and get to playing live shows. That's really important.
Nice, man. Well, dude, that's it. That's the end of the 10 questions.
I love it.
Made it to the end. Dude, thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this.
This was amazing.
It's greatly appreciated that you did it. And for the rulers, we'll get turned to in a second. If you're not a ruler, you should become a ruler, or at least please hit the subscribe button. Because it keeps me motivated to actually create content for you. There'll be links to all things Andy Wood in the description of this video. So make sure you support Andy, buy his albums, buy a Sir signature guitar, buy a True Fire course, everything you can to support this guy and keep him making music. And dude, thank you for doing this. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, dude, it was amazing to hang, dude.
Yeah, man. All right. And for the rulers, we'll be right back for the turn 2.